The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's the 28th of February, 2025. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined once again this morning by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, as we discuss the news of the day. 3 days and counting to the start of spring football practice. It gets here fast. Seems like just yesterday we were watching the Pop-Tarts Bowl fall apart there in the second half and Miami go reeling a little bit into the offseason. Well, now there is a feeling of jubilance once again because there's some fresh faces in the program, some new ideas in the program. Mario Cristobal seems to have done a very good job of rebuilding the defensive side of his coaching staff. And Monday morning, they take Green Tree practice field and have a clean slate, get to start all over again and start building the 2025 Miami Hurricanes, which even with the disappointments of the losses to Georgia Tech, Syracuse, and Iowa State, still have a tough act to follow. Yesterday, we had the opportunity to spend some time with the new defensive assistant coaches. And Matt, we'll talk about each of them here in a moment. But just in general, I mean, I walked out feeling pretty good about what Mario's done here. Very eloquent, well-spoken guys. They all seem to have the right attitude about their jobs and the challenges here at Miami. They seem very invested in working well together and in teaching their kids maybe in a little bit better way than they were taught in the past. And we saw a lot of that fall apart last season, a lot of confusion on the defensive side of the ball, a couple abysmal days against Georgia Tech and Syracuse, and thus a disappointing end to the season. Really no other way to put it. So, Matt, let's start with that. Just your general impressions before we go into the specifics of the remade Mario Cristobal defensive staff.
It's like my Apple Watch I just got. It's new, it's shiny, you like it, but is it still going to be something I enjoy a year from now? Am I going to keep wearing it? I don't know. These are new. Shiny,
are we going to see you talking into your wrist now? Do we really have to?
These are new shiny pieces to the Miami defense. And they're saying all the right things. They, aside from Damian, look, I mean, Will Harris is the guy who I think is the biggest coup of the group. I mean, I know Miami fans want to be excited about everybody, but I mean, Damen Lewis coached for 1 year at Colorado. He wasn't even supposed to be their defensive line coach, but they wound up getting rid of the defensive line coach and he was there. So he was now the defensive line coach. I don't know why it bothers me that fans, not just at Miami, but every school, like whoever the coaches are, whoever the players are, they're the best. They're always the best, no matter what, because we're fans, right? That's the definition of being a fanatic is you're crazy. You don't, it's like news brainwashing. You could watch CNN, you could watch Fox, you watch whatever you want. We are one of the most brainwashed countries in the world. We just don't realize it because we're brainwashed, right? Like Damen Lewis has very little experience coaching in college. Very, very little. Okay. He sounds great. He's an old school Cane. But you know what? So was Mike Rumpf. So was, I'm trying to think. You go on the list. There's a bunch of guys who played at Miami who either were coached at Miami or in the back room of Miami that didn't really work out so great. And, maybe this will be different, but we don't know that. His resume doesn't explode off the page. And you're like, wow, what a hire. We got him away from Alabama and Ohio State, and 10 other programs wanted him. That's not the case with Damen Lewis. Now with Will Harris, it is. He literally told us, he's like, yeah, the NFL wanted me, but he did what was best for his family, which I'm surprised that's not the NFL if they actually really wanted to pay him. But anyway, that's another story. But getting Will Harris, I think, is a huge, huge deal. That's a huge deal. And then, Zach Etheridge will work with him. One's doing safeties, one's doing corners. But Zach Etheridge also, he's a good coach. Is he a great coach? I don't know. His resume doesn't, again, explode off the page like Will Harris's does with, Will Harris has sent 9 guys to the NFL, top recruiter in the country, great assistant coach. Like Will Harris is the dude. He's the Cam Ward of the new defensive coaches, aside from obviously assistant coaches, right? I'm not going to talk about Heatherman. So I'm very excited about him. All three of the guys, again, they said the right things. They were nice and shiny and new, and like, you know, let's move on from that and see how they actually coach and develop, and if these guys actually play well this year.
All right, stop showing off. We get it. You have a new Apple Watch. You can afford the latest and greatest new Apple Watch. We get it.
Literally, I'm getting every time I get an email.
3 times already in the first 5 minutes.
Every time, I'll take it off. Every time I get an email, I get an alert from my Gmail app on my phone and from my mail app on my watch. Like I'm getting double emails for the same email. Like I have no idea. If these coaches are like my Apple Watch, it's not going to work out very well because I cannot work this Apple Watch. It's a impenetrable technology. Elon Musk should fire everybody at Apple. It's unfathomable how people actually can work this thing.
So I'm not surprised that you came up with a negative twist to what really
spilled my tea all over my shirt. You got me all worked up. Look at this. I got to raise this so I don't see my spilled tea. Spill the tea, Gary. Go ahead. Spill the tea. You don't even know what that means, do you? But spill the tea.
I'm going to spill it right now. I'm not surprised that you came up with a negative twist to what otherwise was a festival of happiness. I mean, you know, new coaches coming in, replacing coaches that failed last year. I mean, that is...
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Everybody who's hired is always great. It doesn't matter who they are.
I get it. No argument. They got to prove themselves. All right. Here's why. Let me start with Damen Lewis, since you tore him apart, and he's my guy.
I didn't tear him apart.
You know,
I just said he doesn't have a resume. That's not the truth. God forbid the truth.
No, he does. He just recently went into coaching about 5 years ago. But here's what I like. He spent 3 years with the Seattle Seahawks working under Clint Hurt.
Only because his best friend was actually coaching there.
Well, Clint Hurt. But Clint Hurt took him under his wing as a defensive line coach and has taught him the ropes for 3 years before he went to Colorado. So I love that. Okay, Clint Hurt. Unfortunately, he had to leave Miami, spent a few more years in college. Now is one of the most valued assistants in the National Football League. You know, it was unfortunate for him that just as he ascended to be a defensive coordinator, that Pete Carroll, you know, essentially retired with the Seattle Seahawks, and Clint Hurt had to go over to Philadelphia. But that Super Bowl butt-kicking defensive line that you saw with the Eagles is coached by Clint Hurt. So I like the lineage there. I like that Clint Hurt has taken Damen Lewis under his wing. I like the fact that they're only a phone call away. I like the fact that he's working alongside Jason Taylor. I like the fact that Corey Heatherman has been a defensive line coach. So there's a huge support structure there for Damen Lewis, who did not hide his excitement at being back at Miami. He came into the interview room beaming. You know, talk about how great it felt, how he bleeds orange and green, how happy he is to come back and to be back at his roots. Mario Cristobal likes hiring guys where he can that have roots at Miami. And obviously there's not a whole lineup of them out there in coaching, but it's something that I know that he likes to look at first. You know, bring Kevin Beard back, for example, to be the receivers coach. And I think that this Damen Lewis hire means a lot to Mario. Obviously, it's a position where they need to develop players. They got to just do a better job than they did last year. And it's a big area of focus here going into spring practice. But I think just having a guy that you know is invested emotionally in the program the way that you are. And I think it was Zach Etheridge that was talking about how blown away he was by how invested Mario is just in the recruiting aspect of things. But being able to hire a position coach who is as invested in the program as you are clearly means a lot to Mario.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is what's interesting to me. Like, what if these coaches had last year's defensive back personnel and not all these new guys? I don't know that coaches can make that big a difference. Those guys last year couldn't grasp anything. They were slow to the ball. They were totally confused about everything. And only some of that is Lance Guidry's fault, you know? I mean, it's not like Lance Guidry just showed up out of nowhere and he's like installing some new system. So a lot of this isn't, fans always want to focus on the coaches, especially when there's new ones, but a lot of it's just personnel. I mean, a lot of it is semantics and trying to make it look better for people to digest it and not be mad. And that's why you had to bring in new coaches, right? But the truth is, if Lance Guidry had probably this secondary that we have this year with 5 new portal guys, 3 of whom started at their previous spots, I think this secondary would have been fine last year. Like, personnel, really good personnel will cover up coaching issues. Really bad personnel will make good coaches look bad. I mean, people say Tom Brady is the only reason Bill Belichick was a good coach. And maybe it's true. I'm not here to argue about it or not take sides on it. I'm an independent. I'm not pro-Democrat, pro-Republican, pro-Brady, pro-Belichick. I'm just staying in the middle. And to that point, the coaches get the accolades and the coaches get the blame. And Mario Cristobal had no choice but to get rid of Lance Guidry and no choice but to bring in a coordinator who wanted to bring in new staff. That's what they do. Because of what happened last year with really bad secondary personnel. And we had a whole big fight on the message boards the other day because I should say discussion. People tend to say I'm fighting with them. I've really just been discussing. I'm just a nasty person, so it looks like I'm fighting. But I made the horrible mistake of saying that this year's wide receiver core is last year's defensive backs core as it stands right now, meaning like last year, the biggest question mark on the entire team was on defense, and it was the secondary. And guess what? It turned out to be a disaster. But I was pointing about at this point in the season, right, heading into spring practice, we didn't know if the secondary was going to be any good. At that time, people were saying the secondary is going to be fine. Don't worry about all these deficiencies that people like me were pointing to. It's going to be fine. There's going to be, Jaden Harris is the fastest guy on defense. Mish Powell is going to be great from Washington. Darrell Porter Jr. Had these great Pro Football Focus grades. Damari Brown has started 4 games. He's going to be amazing. And then they added, De'Ani Hill and this and that and the other thing. And now what you see is a bunch of totally unproven wide receivers, right? They're top receiver on paper right now at 150 yards last year. And I think 40 of those came on one touchdown in the bowl game, right? That's JoJo Trader. The other starter as of right now on the outside is a guy who was the number 4 receiver at LSU last year. And the slot guy, I can't imagine that they're going to go with a true freshman like Malachi Toney. Ray did not look like he was ready last year at all. And like, I don't know where you go with that. Like, people were mad at me for saying that, that maybe the receiver position is not going to be good. They're like, what do you mean? These are all 4 and 5 stars. The DBs were only 3 stars, which was not true, by the way. I mean, Zaquan Patterson was a highly regarded recruit. And they had other guys that were highly regarded that were young players, right? That were safeties and cornerbacks on the roster that were 4 stars last year. They were just true freshmen who didn't play. So anyway, I don't think there was one person in the entire thread who agreed with me. And there's probably like 80 responses. Not one person agreed with me. And, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, there's a first time for everything. But like, that's my concern position right now. So I think defense is going to be fine. Like, defense is not my concern this year. The secondary's been addressed. The secondary's been addressed. The defensive line is I think is going to be good. I mean, as long as they stay healthy. Okay, Akeem Messidor and Ruben Bain have to stay healthy. If they stay healthy, you'll be fine. You can work one of those guys inside if you need to. There's going to be enough Cole McConaughey's and Justin Scott's out there to make up reps for you. You got Ahmad Moten back after he played a lot. They're going to be fine up front. Wesley Bassein's fine at linebacker. They'll probably try to find another linebacker in the portal, but Jalen Alderman started 2 years ago at Louisville, right? And he could play middle. Raul Aguirre looked good in limited reps at middle. Like, they're going to be fine on defense this year. Like, that's me saying this. Last year, I was saying the opposite. Last year, I'm like, they're going to be great on offense. Defense is going to be an issue. And guess who was right, Gary? This guy, who's very rarely right. And now I'm saying offense is the only concern. Like, if offense comes through, if Carson Beck is the leader he can be, if he plays really well, he led the SEC in interceptions last year. If he doesn't put the ball in harm's way, gets the ball to players, so they get, if some of these receivers do step up, JoJo Trader could be an All-American, right? He has the talent to be, but he has not obviously shown it, right? He's going into year 2. These unknowns need to be answered. You got 4 returning starters on offense. They're all on the offensive line. I'd argue two of those guys are actually really good, and the other two we just don't know. Matthew McCoy and Markel Bell, they sort of split time last year, and they were good. They weren't great. Okay, sorry to disappoint everybody. So the offense is a total unknown. All these new pieces have to come together. I'm still not 100% sure that last year, if it really was Cam Ward's offense or if it was Shannon Dawson's offense. Like, is Shannon Dawson that much of a genius that he can make it work no matter what? Or was it really Cam Ward who made the offense look that much better? My guess is it's the latter. You probably weren't following along, so now you can guess which one that is, the latter. And we're going to find out this year, right? But big picture, like, these new coaches on defense, they have much better personnel this year. They're going to look good because of it. Again, if the offense can be good, this will be a playoff team. Like, that's the key to me. The offense has to average 35 plus points. If they can do that, this team's going to the playoffs, period.
No, not surprising. I don't necessarily agree with you. I think challenges on defense remain enormous. Let's finish the conversation on Damen Lewis, okay? He inherits a position where they're losing Simeon Barrow in 421 reps that he took last year, CJ Clark, 345 reps he took last year, Marley Cook, Anthony Campbell. You're bringing in a transfer portal guy that you're counting on to be a dude in David Blay. So that's got to work out. Messidor and Bain have got to be reprogrammed to just get after it. Okay. The Lance Guidry schemes are going to be out the door. These guys up front are going to be turned loose to go wreak havoc in the backfield the way old school Miami teams used to be able to do. That's the idea going into spring practice. But those defenses that went after it for Miami in all those years were built around Vince Wilfork, Warren Sapp, Russell Maryland, elite defensive tackle players that they now have to try to develop. And that's where Damen Lewis comes in, because you've got this 5-star kid, Justin Scott. God, I wish he had just redshirted last year. He played 113 relatively worthless reps, in my opinion. And I wish he was still a redshirt freshman. I know they say nobody does that anymore. Nobody redshirts kids, but that doesn't mean you can't. And I would love it more if he was a freshman right now than a sophomore, but he must be developed this year. He is too good of a prospect to go 2 of potentially 3 seasons in college football without making an impact on games. So Damen Lewis is going to be tasked with developing him. You mentioned Amon Moten, a guy that flashes from time to time, who unquestionably is going to be in the rotation. He's got to take the next step this spring. Just has to, if this defense is going to start achieving some improvement goals that they're surely going to go into spring drills with. So there's a lot on Damen Lewis's plate, Matt. And, I know that he's not experienced, and maybe it's asking a lot of him at this stage of his career. But he's got to really be on point here starting on Monday morning. They've got 15 practices here to improve these guys and walk out of spring with a good feeling. Otherwise, they're going to be back in the portal looking for another Simeon Barrow or someone along those lines to be able to plug a potential weakness there at defensive tackle.
And that's the beauty of the portal. And to me, Damen Lewis, the benefit of having him, obviously he doesn't have the experience as a coach, but in the NFL for a long time, former Hurricane, he knows what it's supposed to look like. He knows what NFL defensive tackles look like. He knows the work ethic that you need to have to be an NFL defensive tackle. And perhaps most of all, he knows what the culture at the old Miami was, and he wants to bring that back. So, to me, you say I was blasting Damen Lewis or whatever. I was talking about him as a coach. He has no resume that should make him, if his name wasn't Damen Lewis, if he wasn't a former Miami player, he would not be coaching here. Like, that's just the truth. I'm sorry. But because of those two things, he is a great fit here, because they need some of those guys to sort of remind everybody. And you could see when he spoke yesterday, when we used to interview him back in the days, right? I mean, he's one of those Miami Hurricanes players who just says whatever, brash, however you want to put it, in your face. There's no filter needed, because he will back up whatever he says with his play. And he wants his players to be like that. That's a defensive line mentality that doesn't mesh with today's society and the way, young 19 to 22-year-olds sort of behave nowadays. But a little bit of that, if just a little bit of that can be put into pill form and given to every player, each day on the defensive line, like that's what you need. And if you watch some of his clips of him coaching at Colorado, he's like that in practice. Like he's in their faces, yelling at them. This is not a quiet, reticent coach who's just like, oh, well, maybe you'll figure it out for tomorrow. Good try. That might be how some people coach nowadays, because you have to when your players are making $1 million more than you. He will scream. He will be in the drills. He will be pushing and pulling. He will not accept anything other than sort of the work ethic he had himself. And you see that if you watch some of his Colorado film of him coaching. That's the benefit of having him. So I wasn't blasting him for anything other than the fact he doesn't have a resume. Everything else, I'm happy to have him here. And I think,
yeah, and it's fair. I
think defense will be fine. The defense I'm not worried about.
I justifiably give you a hard time, but you're not wrong. He doesn't. I'm excited about him. I like what he does bring, but I do recognize that you're right. I mean, he's not really experienced as a coach, and hopefully, the time he's put in with Clint Hurt has made him ready for this challenge here at Miami, and we're going to see how that starts to unfold here on Monday when spring practice begins. All right, so you mentioned Will Harris, the alpha dude of these new additions, no argument whatsoever. The guy walks in the room, exudes swagger from the second the door opens. Funny, engaging. You could see he's going to probably be a good recruiter. And I walked away, and you're going to say the same thing, but I walked away from talking to him with a pretty good feeling that Miami is significantly upgraded. Let's remember now, okay, and we're going to talk about Zach Etheridge too. The DB coaches last year were Lance Guidry and Chavez Jackson, and neither one did a very good job, okay? Now you got Will Harris and Zach Etheridge coming in, and go on our YouTube channel and watch the videos of their press sessions yesterday, and I think you'll walk away with a similarly good feeling about these guys. And Matt, Harris, very well thought of. Yes, the NFL did take a look at him right after he accepted the Miami job. He chose to stay here. But your impressions of Harris after getting the chance to meet him yesterday?
Well, after the press conference yesterday, I actually went to Matson Hammock and went out stone crabbing. And two of our pots, you have them on GPS, so you sort of see where the buoy is. Two of them were not where the buoy was. Okay, do you know what that means when that happens, Gary? What does that mean? Did
somebody tried to steal your crabs?
Somebody picked them up, looked in them, and then put them back in the water, and now you have to figure out where they are. And we did find them.
You don't think they took crabs out of there while they did that?
Well, okay, so we actually screw them down with a hex screw. So you can't just unscrew it with a screwdriver, right? Because people do, believe it or not, they steal your crabs. So they actually took a chisel and broke off the top of one of the pots. The other one, they sort of wedged it up, but they weren't able to get the second screw out. So that one still had a bunch of stone crabs in it. But my point is, Will Harris is like the guy who steals your stone crabs. He doesn't give an F. He will take your recruits. He will take your players. He will do whatever it takes to be great. And what did he do? He left some chess piece on the, on the Florida coaches.
That's what they were saying. I mean,
I guarantee he won't say what it was. I guarantee it was a pawn. You're a pawn, and I'm the king. I guarantee it was a pawn. And he's the thief. And you know what? In college football, you want guys who steal your pots. Those are the guys you want. You can call them unscrupulous. You can call them, whatever name you want. They're the best coaches, right? The guys who just are let's try hard today, guys. Hey, give your best effort. Try to listen and remember what I say. Hey, let's take a test from the meeting we had yesterday. Oh, you got a 75. Oh, well, try to study your MacBook Pro better next time. No, he doesn't do that. He will get the best players. He will get the most out of them. And he's proven it time and time again. He's gotten great recruits. He's put guys in the NFL. Hell, when he left Florida, one top recruit decommitted immediately. He's probably coming to Miami, and another one is probably going to wind up coming here too. That was not even considering Miami before that. This is Stephen Wagner's and Azubi Charles's area, so I'm not going to sort of steal their thunder or whatever. But like, this guy is a great recruiter. He's proven he can develop talent. Like, these are the kinds of coaches you need. And Miami has a history of underpaying their assistant coaches. So it's nice to see they went out and they got a guy who NFL wants, other teams want. That's what you need at some point, because that that attracts more talent, which makes your team better. And B, if he actually can develop players, like, how many years have we been talking about the lack of development and players even getting worse? That will not happen with this guy. Okay. And the safeties in particular, which is going to be his expertise, that's the position that does need the most help. They took 4 cornerbacks who were all really, really good in the portal. They took one safety who started at a non-major program for 1 year as a redshirt freshman. And other than that, they got the guys back from last year, Dylan Day and I already mentioned Zaquan Patterson. So there, and Markeith is here for now. Maybe he'll play better, but like, there's not that the safety position doesn't have that much talent. I think when he said we got to figure out who can play where, I think Xavier Lucas winds up at safety. I really do, because they have too many cornerbacks, and Xavier has the speed, the strength, and just the ball hawking and the knowledge base to be a safety. Like, he can play safety. And so my expectation is he winds up at safety. They don't need him to be a backup cornerback, And if it's not him, it'll be another cornerback. There's going to be some cornerback who came from the portal who's going to be at safety this year. Mark my words. And I love that, because you know what?
Well, they kind of suggested that.
Huh?
They suggested that they want to try guys at different spots to make sure.
I think it'll be Xavier Lucas, right? That's what I'm saying. He literally said it, and I think it's going to be Xavier, because they need one of these corners. They have 2 guys who started last year at different programs, right? O'Connor and the Michigan State guy, who are both really good corners. And you have back your nickel and Damari Brown. You obviously have back OJ Frederique. So
don't forget Zechariah Poyser either. He's going to probably be a starter.
That's safety, though.
Yeah, it's safety. Yeah,
he's a safety. But what I'm saying is, I mentioned him. He only played 1 year last year as a redshirt freshman at a minor program, Jacksonville State or wherever he was. So you have 4 really pretty high-level corners. And I would argue no safeties that I think right now you could say, okay, they did it at a high level and proved they're great. So, to me, it makes sense to move one of the corners to safety if they can do it. And I think again, Lucas will be the guy. I'd love to see him start at safety. I think that'd be great. You want to get your best 5 defensive backs on the field together. And I think he's one of the most talented guys they'll have.
Yeah. All right. And we spoke to Zach Etheridge too, and he was impressive as well. Very impressive, very well spoken. He loves Mario Cristobal, loves, what he's learning from Mario already. But there were 2 themes with both of these guys. And one that really stuck out to me because it was such a problem last year. And I actually was the guinea pig that was asking some of the questions about this subject, but the communication in the secondary was not real good last season. As you guys know, busts all over the place, guys flapping their arms around, not having a clue what they're supposed to be doing play to play. These guys are very focused on changing that. They obviously have seen it. They know it was a problem. So from day one in the DB room, it's been all about communication, and not just teaching the players to communicate with each other, but these 2 coaches communicating with each other, making sure they're on the same page, making sure they're teaching the right things, making sure that their players are interchangeably coached, regardless of which position group that they're working with on the practice field. You can tell that these guys are really dialed in on the communication aspect of what they're doing, and are very, very comfortable working together towards those common goals, Matt.
Yeah, I wasn't really following what you're talking about. I was still thinking about my missing stone crab pots.
Right, because you're not focused on working together with me.
No,
You're
I zoned
focused
out.
on your goddamn crabs. I'm
Yeah,
sitting
no
here
doubt.
trying to lead a show here, and I'm talking to you about pertinent subjects, and you're
Yeah.
ignoring me as usual.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'm
You want to ask
talking.
me a question? Well, so what am I supposed to
I
comment
was
about?
talking about the communication of the DBs.
Oh yeah,
How the
right. Yeah, I heard you
how the
talk about
coaches
that.
are
Yeah,
intent
you talked about it
on
for way
making
too
sure it
long.
gets better, and how these
Yeah.
guys also are very focused on communicating with each other.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what you want me to say about that. Yeah, they need to communicate better. Like, what do you just pass me the baton for something I can't even, like, what do you want me to say? The communication was bad. Hopefully it'll be
All right.
better. Are you happy now?
Fine.
This
You're
is what you
worthless.
need me to
Whatever.
say? You couldn't
Okay,
figure this out
let's move
yourself?
on. We'll move on. You're worthless on this subject. Just take my word for it. Okay, the coaches are they're doing a good job of getting.
It's really on.
These guys are new working. It was quiet. You don't know anything about the subject.
All right.
You already said you don't want to weigh in.
That's
So
true.
these guys don't know each other. They came from different places. They've never worked together. So they've only been on campus a week or two. So this time here has been spent kind of getting to know each other and spending a lot of time talking to each other, because they have got to be aligned with each other before they can get the players aligned with each other, if that makes sense. So that's what's been going on. Big focus on communication as spring practice begins Monday. So to sum it all up, at least I know I feel good about the direction they're going. I acknowledge what Matt said. Damen Lewis does not have a deep resume, no argument. But I feel like they're moving in the right direction. And Mario's going to be bringing in a bunch of analysts here, in the next few days. We don't have the names all lined up yet, but there will be a whole slew of analysts coming in that will fortify what these guys are doing. And you're going to see a whole new look defense from the Hurricanes starting on Monday, and a lot of teaching going on the practice field. And I hope it works out for Mario, because he is not a defensive coach. He needs that side of the ball taken care of. And he is counting on Heatherman and this new staff to get that done, and get these guys ready for the 2025 season. All right. Let's see. Next up, let me touch on the Jay Lucas basketball coaching hiring. People yesterday were telling me that this deal is about concluded, and that they're working towards what hopefully will be announcement. Could come as soon as today. Could be Monday. A lot will probably depend on Lucas's schedule. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen with his exit from Duke, but things are moving along here. I know it's been a long week for some of you guys that have been anxious since his name leaked out into the community. But it takes time to get guys hired and negotiate all the terms and things like that. And from what we hear, they're getting very close to a signed contract. So we're expecting that announcement soon, maybe as soon as today. So other stuff to talk about. Let's see. Let's do recruiting first. The Under Armour Miami camp is on Sunday, and we'll be out there. Zuby and Steven will be grinding it out for you guys. And this is a good place for me to say, listen, if you're not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, your subscriptions are what allow us all to do what we do every single day. Everybody's got families that they have to help support and everything. And it really is your subscriptions that allow us to do all that. So if you're not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, please head on over to the website. You could try out the site for a week for $1 before you're charged. We don't think you will be unhappy. We got a great community of fans that interact every day on the message boards. We're grinding it out every minute of every day, keeping you guys up to speed on all the news. So head on over to CaneSport.com. Check us out if you're not yet a subscriber. But Zuby and Steven, our two young recruiting guys, are going to be out there at the Under Armour camp on Sunday, bringing you tons of coverage. So make sure that you check up on that. In the meantime, we are previewing all of the freshmen early entries that are going to be starting spring practice on Monday. So you'll be able to check that out on the website. We also have a steady stream of stories on recruits. Like, for instance, today we got a story on 2026 four-star defensive tackle Preston Carey. We got a story on four-star wide receiver Samorian Wingo and how his recruitment is heating up with official visits set. Miami, a top contender. We have a story on Edge, Kamarian Johnson. Hurricanes are battling out a bunch of SEC powerhouses for him. So you get a steady stream of recruiting stories coming. Make sure you check all of those out. All right. And last thing for today I want to talk about is the Miami baseball team, because they deserve us talking about them. They are off to a really nice start to the season, but they have not played anybody yet. That changes with this Florida weekend series that they're up in Gainesville for. Matt, you were out there this week talking to all the coaches and baseball players. Give us a little bit of synopsis on the mindset of Miami baseball as they head up to play the Gators this weekend.
Yeah, they expect to lose all the games. I mean, look, the Gators are number 6. Miami's unranked. Miami's way down. How would they even expect to win a game? They should expect to lose every game.
It's an opportunity to show that they're a legitimate team this year. They're coming off a disappointing season.
I was going to get to that.
Thank you. Please do.
I was being facetious. You could look that word up. So this is going to tell us really, if JD Arteaga put together a good roster or not, because they played, I know they're 8-1. Like they played Niagara and other teams that just aren't particularly good. And guess what though? So is Florida. Florida hasn't played anybody either, and Florida just escaped 2 nights ago from, I think, North Florida. North Florida scores 4 runs in the top of the ninth to tie the game, and then the Gators win in the bottom of the ninth.
It's baseball.
On a wild pitch. Right, on a wild pitch.
Anybody could beat anybody.
To me, honestly, it would be a success for the Miami baseball team at this point if they would take 1 out of 3 games against the number 6 team in the country on the road and are competitive in the other 2 games. If you lose 10-2, 14-1, and then you win 6-5, like, that's not going to do it for me. But if this team can be competitive in all 3 games with the number 6 team in the country, win 1 of them, and then come home, I think they'll have a chance in the ACC schedule to be decent. These guys, the one thing that seems clear with these guys is they're having fun and they have a good bond. As you talk to all of them, they just gush about it. And that's something that's been missing, the fun aspect and the getting along aspect. And the fact that they've been killing even bad teams without Daniel Cuvée even hitting well. The kid, he's hitting 322, which sounds good, right? With 1 home run. But for him, that's terrible. And he leads the team in strikeouts with 11 or 12 and like 28 at-bats. Like, he's striking out a third of the time. And I asked JD about him yesterday, and JD said he's starting to hit the ball harder. He's having better pitch selection. He's swinging some terrible pitches before. And he thinks he's starting to get in that groove. So if he gets in that groove, and if Jake Ogden, who, by the way, played in Cooperstown with my son, I wish my son would be playing baseball at the University of Miami, but he's not. So I know Jake and his dad from back in those days, and a great, quiet young man, but a great young man. And he's hitting 444, and I can't say enough good things about how he's played. But again, they got like 5 guys hitting over 330. Their 3 starting pitchers all have ERAs that are 1.80 or better. Those are championship level stats. But again, they're padded against really bad teams. So now we're going to find out. Like, this, to me, this is the season opener.
Yeah, I mean, they've played a couple series against Bethune-Cookman, and now they're going to play.
Yeah, the other stuff was preseason. Now we're going to find out. So this series, and there's going to be, it's going to be packed at Florida, obviously, and they're all going to hate Miami. So it's going to be really, really interesting, because if Miami does get swept, and I think a lot of people out there in the non-Miami universe think Miami's going to get swept. If they do get swept, then it's, here we go again. And, Arteaga is probably not going to last, if the season goes south like that and they have another losing season. I mean, they didn't, before last year, they hadn't had a losing season since like 1954. You were 40 years old, right? In 1954. So it was a long time ago. And you can't have that happen back to back and expect your coach to still be there. And I'm rooting for JD, the nicest guy in the world, deserves success. But, Blake Sears gone. Like, a lot of these guys jumped ship after last year. It was a disaster last year. And JD pieced it together with these guys from all different places, And the funny thing was one of the starting pitchers who came from Cincinnati, he's like, his name's Griffin. His quote, as the team was getting ready to leave on the bus, was like, this is really cool because I was at Cincinnati and our big rivalry game was Xavier. So it's a lot cooler to be playing Florida when you're at Miami. It's a much better rivalry, so he's very excited about it. He'll be starting, I guess, on Saturday. So, we're gonna learn a lot about the baseball team. There's really not a lot to say about it until they play the games. If we come back on Sunday night or Monday morning or whatever it is, I guess after the last game ends Sunday night, we'll have a much better sense of just where Miami stands and how good or how bad this roster is that JD's put together.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we'll be watching that all weekend long as well.
And by the way, I don't know if you knew this, Damen Lewis is actually coaching the outfielders this weekend because he has just as much experience coaching in baseball as he does coaching in football. So that's what works out really well.
Oh, come on. Oh. All right. With that, I think it's time that we get out of here. We thank you so much, despite Matt, for starting out your day with us. And hope you guys have a great weekend. We'll be getting ready for the start of spring practice on Monday. We'll probably come back with a show Monday morning previewing the start of spring. And then we'll have tons of coverage for you on Monday from the practice field and Green Tree. We're on the opening of spring practice. So for Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. Thanks again for starting your day with us, and we'll see you next time, everybody.